The January 26th, 2016 regular meeting, our rescheduled meeting from last Tuesday night. I think I will start the meeting by apologizing to anyone that you were here ready to go. As board president, I will let you know that even though I left my house at 4:20 that evening, at 5:15 I was still maybe a mile from my house, and there was no way I was going to make it. So if anyone's unhappy or had a problem with that, you can send me a letter or send me an email, because I could not get here. So I apologize for the late cancel, but there was just no way we're going to get here. So anyway, we're here tonight, and we will begin the meeting and call to order. And everyone is in attendance this evening. Mrs. Luton, if you'll make record. And so we will start out by our Pledge of Allegiance. And if you'll just join me, we will move forward. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we regularly scheduled meeting had some honoring excellence to take care of. However, we're going to invite those individuals back, and we will be recognizing excellence in February and in March. So we're going to move right on to approval of agenda. So what I need at this time, do I have a motion to approve the Tuesday, January 26th Board of Education regular session agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. I have a motion by Annie and a second by Jean. So at this time, please vote. Thank you. Motion carries. We'll move on to the public comments, and at this time, Mrs. Luton, do we have comments? We do not. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to approval of the minutes. We have consent agenda minutes to approve. We also have consent agenda financial, and we have our consent agenda personnel. We do all three together. And at this time, do I have a motion that the board approves consent agenda? And I might go back up just a minute and say these are all things that this is our second read. We've had an opportunity to ask questions, get additional information if necessary. So we'll be voting those at this time. So do I have a motion that the board approves consent agenda items 3.01, approval of minutes, 4.01, consent agenda, financial contracts and change orders, and 5.01, personnel elections? So I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Tim, a second?
Second.
Jerry? And please vote. This is mine. Thank you. Moving on to treasurer's report. Again, this information was provided at our study session. As I understand, there have been no questions asked by the board, nothing submitted to administration requiring additional information, or no questions at this time. So rather than have Ms. Embry come forward, unless anyone has a question tonight that you'd like to ask, I think we can move forward with, am I doing this correctly? Because we have lots of documents, but unless you have any questions, specific questions that you want to ask, we'll just move on with a motion that the board approves the January 26, 2016 Treasurer's Report as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Jill Patterson, second by Annie Bush, and at this time we can vote. Okay, This time I'd like to invite Mr. Scott Went to come to the podium and share bond projects quarterly report with us.
Are you gonna make it? Great, here we go. This evening, I'm just going to touch base on a couple of the projects as a summary. You've seen the report attached to board docs. So this evening, I'm going to highlight the two main projects that we are still working on at this point in time. So as we go to our Fremont project, I just wanted to show you, you've seen this diagram before, so it basically outlines where the administration center, learning areas, the gymnasium, just to give you a point of reference as we move forward on our slides. This is to help you understand as you read the report, which talks about sections A, B, and C. Down at the bottom is section C, which is basically, with the exception of this new kitchen area, all renovation of the existing building. Section B is this center section here. This gray portion of it is existing, which is being renovated. The yellow is all new construction, and it represents the gymnasium here, which is the pre-stressed concrete panels. And then section A is all new construction with the administration and the new front doors. So just as a point of reference as we look through the next slides. This slide is taken from Evergreen, looking back towards Fremont, so from the northeast. This would be from the northwest. You can see the sheathing being put on the exterior. As we go around behind the school, this section here is actually the new kitchen area that's been added. You can see the new gymnasium that's currently in place. Now as we go up on top, what gets everyone very excited to see decking on roofs. This is actually section A, so this is the new section. This is the last section to be, or the only section that's currently not dried in on the project right now. And this is also in section A. You will notice from the report, as you look at this, this did not have decking on it a week ago, so things are moving quickly at this point. This is from inside, basically standing in the section B, looking out to A, the new entry, so you can see the roof decking in place and work going on. This is part of the exterior on section A on the west side. This is another interior shot. You can see some of the interior studding going on in the new section A as well. This was from a week ago, so it didn't have the roof decking on at that point. Now all the decking's in place, and now the exterior studding is going around. Another shot from there. We're slowly now starting to turn to the right to get a feel for where we're at. This is the new restroom areas, the new media center in between. This is actually inside of section B along the new gymnasium area. This would be a classroom area here. This is in section C, where we had an existing ramp, an area where it's just being prepped for finishes. The all-purpose room that's been cleaned up now, and you can see how it's been opened up into where the new kitchen area will be. So we are monitoring this project very closely. It's a tight schedule, and we'll continue to monitor this as we move on. As we look at Kickapoo, yes? I don't remember offhand. I'll let you know. I apologize. Well, the current schedule that they're on is right at the beginning of July, is the current schedule that we get from the contractor.
And I want to kind of put you on the spot a little bit, Scott.
Thank
so
you.
I'm telling you in advance. How confident are you in that these days?
80%. This is, as we look at Kickapoo,
Phase 2, so that's the auditorium section. Inside the auditorium, it's all filled with scaffolding at this point as they're working on the ceiling areas within that. Here you can see some of the wall finishes that were being put on as part of that project. This is part of a connecting corridor that'll go from the new east entrance to the new auditorium. This is the building on the back side of the auditorium, so this is where your dressing rooms and those areas, the green room, those things would be. This picture actually is of the new east entrance, and you see the auditorium in the background. You see it's all tented in at this point so that they can put some portable heat in there to continue working during the temperatures. And the last picture is kind of a panoramic view, so it's a little stretched out of proportion, but you can get a feel for how that entryway is coming together with that project. This project is on schedule to be completed middle of July. And that's where we're at this point with the projects, and if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see progress.
We're moving on to section 8.01, board policies, additions, revisions, which no policies for review this evening. Moving on to 9.01, sale of property, East Chestnut Expressway. Carol Embry will come forward.
Good evening. So we do have some great news this evening in that we have a recommendation for the sale of the property located at East Chestnut Expressway. That's that very small tract of land that's by the GSC building and also the old transportation facility. And the offer presented is for $76,400, and it would be an agreement with a Mr. Larry Lipscomb.
Does the board have questions, comments, any additional information needed? So at this time, do I hear a motion that the board approves the final contract to sell a tract of property on East Chestnut Expressway in the amount of $76,400?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion Tim, second by Jill Patterson. And please, everyone vote this time. Thank you. Moving on to 10.01 internal audit plan. As you may recall, we have had discussion and had an opportunity to hear a presentation from Waylon at our study session. So I don't know that, from what I understand, we've had no questions come forward from the board, no additional comments or discussion. And at this time, do we have a motion that the board approves the 2016 internal audit plan as presented? So moved. Thank you. Motion by Jean Twitty, a second by?
Second.
Jerry Lee.
There's an auction there.
I was ready for that.
Oh, now, can't laugh, it's time to vote.
Must vote. Thank you. Voting is complete. Moving on to facility master plan. Carol Embry.
Good evening again. This is the culmination of a great deal of work that actually began back in 2013. And we highlighted that at the last meeting when details were shared, but I would like to highlight for you some of the important points. We did review the RFP and let an RFP with a due date of October 2015. We had a committee comprised of leaders within the system as well as Mr. Rosenberry and Ms. Patterson assisting us through the interview process. We had 4 responses to the RFP, and those ranged in price and I would say also significantly a differential in the work recommended between $162,000 to not to exceed $920,261. And we provided for you as first read a recommendation to accept the MGT of America Incorporated to come into our system and provide a thorough analysis that would include community engagement, staff engagement, to ascertain what is it that we need to do to sustain the assets that we have in the form of our buildings to ensure that they're providing an appropriate learning environment for our students. And the recommendation this evening is for MGT of America. The proposal fee is not to exceed $336,145 for the actual project. We had a secondary request that they would also provide a bid, each vendor, with regard to the demographic study, and that's for $16,015. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this juncture.
And the time frame for that is?
We originally had quite an aggressive timeline proposed, and that was part of our conversation with the vendors at the time we conducted the interviews. And from start to finish, the approved final plans originally were for September 2016. That was showing where we would have community engagement taking place in the summer. After interviewing with the companies, and specifically in the interview process with MGT of America, they would like to get started in February and really get engaged with members of the staff and the community right away during the time that school's in session, so that we can ensure a thorough assessment is made. So we would still be looking at delivery of final results next fall.
So our motion will include both the project itself and then the demographic study.
That is correct.
Any other questions or comments? Is there anything that you'd like to share with us specifically about MGT?
I would say that this is what they do, and the most impressive thing for many of us was that they have people who understand education, the business of education, and they are highly engaged through the process and will be part of the team that comes in to meet with us. And this, again, is the work that they do, and they're very knowledgeable and well experienced.
Okay. So at this time, no other questions or comments? Do we have a motion that the board approves MGT of America, Inc. for Facility Master Planning Services as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Annie Bush. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Tim Rosenberry. Please vote. Motion carries. Moving on, this is a section of our meeting. We have public comments to address non-agenda items. Mrs. Luton, do we have any? Okay, no comments. We'll move on to report from administration. 12.01 cabinet report.
Perfect.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, I call on our cabinet members to give brief updates, and then I'll finish with a few closing comments. Parker, will you begin?
I'll begin, and for those of you who don't know, we're in the height of our teacher hiring season, which is earlier this year than it has ever been, so we're very excited about that. To date, we've hired 23 new teachers for next school year, which is fantastic, given that the first new teacher we hired from outside the system last year was hired on April 3rd, so we're considerably earlier than last year. We're very focused on getting the very best, so definitely quality over quantity at this point, but we're conducting lots of interviews and trying to be as visible in the community as we can so that we attract the best possible talent. One way that we're doing that this year, I mentioned this before, but just to keep it on your radar, February 4th, that will happen between now and our next board meeting is our Teach SPS event. So, I'm sorry, next board meeting is the second. So after the next board meeting, Teach SPS event. So that's an exciting opportunity for us to be very present in the community and rally the interest in Springfield schools. So we're continuing to work in both of those areas. It's an exciting time.
The Career Center is having a hiring event soon. Have you ever participated in their employment events?
We do. We participate in college and university career and recruitment fairs really in the four-state area. Most colleges have days specifically dedicated to education. So I don't know which one you're referring to specifically, but it's,
There's one coming up soon,
but it's likely that those colleges, for example, MSU has an education-specific day. We are there at those events all the time.
Very good. Mike?
Part of the ripple effect of the early separation is that we're going to bring teachers on board in January, and as part of our work, we've decided that waiting until August to onboard them into their classroom seems a little long. So we're revamping the induction program and going to be offering induction opportunities in May, June, July, and August to onboard them, connect them to a mentor, to connect them to their principal, and then later on we'll be connecting to as a large group with a closer by Dr. Jungman. We're reversing that whole process so that we get them deeper relationship into the system right away. So excited about that work and how it's affecting our induction program at the same time. Also want to just let you know that I know it's been cold and we've canceled school, but we are revving up for Explore, our summer learning opportunity that will be kicking off with registration on February 8th. And you'll learn more about that next week at the study session from the innovation team. So I want to put that on your radar. Also putting on your radar, we have completed all of the deployments for year 1 Ignite schools. And right now that team is frantically trying to put year 2 model classrooms in place so that we have a sneak peek for those year 2 buildings, what this is going to look like and feel like, and so ease that anxiety as we start to bridge the gap into year 2. So we're very thankful for those teachers who have stepped up to be part of that experience. I would also just want to connect you with our Imagine grants. We had a few of them play before you were coming in. We've had 45 of those Imagine grants, if I'm correct, Dr. Hacknorth. I think it's 45 at this point. To submit, we're giving away $1,000 for the classroom. If you have not watched those, I highly recommend you take a moment on Twitter and just start watching. That's the unique application process, is that it is a Twitter at the hashtag Imagine grants. So great opportunity, great creative spirit happening within our buildings. And the last thing I would just leave you with is that we are conducting or pulling together a stakeholder group for our district assessment committee. As we kind of go through this process, we're also looking at what data is in the system, how are we looking at students, what do we need to measure, and so that process is starting to come into place and will be probably initiating in February. So we'll bring you more information as that continues to go forth. So thank you. Questions?
Can I just real quick about this? The early notice incentive is, whenever I think about what that looks like, is like tossing a pebble into a pond, and then the ripples from that, which is the new hires early. So we get to pick from those, the very top highly qualified teachers first, and then that's quite a plus for us. And then the next ripple is then getting them placed, or at least getting them in where they're getting some professional learning early on, instead of that last minute scramble, the week or two before school starts. And thinking of my experience and how incredibly awesome this is for those teachers. And then the next ripple from that then is the mentor, setting them up with a mentor in a building early so they can actually go to that school and be a part of that toward the end of the school year, however their schedule allows. That is just amazing. And so it seems to me that there's still more ripples to come from this.
Best case scenario, we get them hired, they come into our May induction program, they get their device, they get their email, they get connected to their principal, they know what their classroom might be, they get connected to their mentor teacher. Now they have 60, 80, 90 days to connect and lesson plan and develop units. Now we come into the first day of opening, and a lot of that's behind them versus just right in front of them. So very excited about this ripple effect that you talked about.
It is. It's terrific. So thank you.
Another small ripple that I would make mention of, I think I heard Ignite, Mike talked about the fact that they've all rolled out, but we got the mobile hotspots in, and I do believe we checked out nearly 150 in the first couple of days at Hillcrest for students in need, needing access. So already taking advantage of broadening our scope of access for students. So glad to see the teams actively supporting our kids. So thank you, Dr. Dawson. Ms. Embry?
I would like to share with you that we are still in the process of working through the capital planning requests that have come through from our building leaders and department leaders. And it's been a great opportunity for Dr. Dawson, Dr. Steiger, and Dr. Anderson and myself, as well as the operations leaders, to collaborate together and identify what would best serve our students. We are looking at this through the lens of ensuring that whatever we do does not interfere with the work of the facility master planning process. So know that that is at the forefront of our minds with that. Also, the budget review process, we've started down that path for FY17. But in order to prepare for FY17, we look at the current year, and a thorough review of revenue and expenditures is taking place with that. And again, partnering with Dr. Dawson and members of the learning side to review current year budgets. One of the pieces of that includes the January membership count. Tomorrow is our official membership day. Those are that's one of the factors that we use to estimate current year revenue on the state side. So the work continues, and you'll be hearing more about that work in the upcoming months.
Last couple things. Obviously, we had a great, and most of you, I think, attended at least one night, event, Tournament of Champions, for our athletics department, and continue to do wonderful things, and a great community event, so we celebrate that. And then I would tell you, legislative front is time to heat up, right? Because we had the State of the State last week. That really kicks off the budgeting cycle. Overall, if you haven't read the updates, I'd say positive news. The initial allocation from the governor in his budget is $85 million into the foundation formula, and that follows a couple years of 185 and I think 100. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we've had nearly, if we can land this, $350 to $400 million in investment. So while we've began to rebound from the tough times, we have seen some substantial investments in education. Still going to be short of the target, right? And we know we're 500, and this will close the gap a little bit, probably around 425. Making strides, so we just support the legislature to make sure that investment lands in May, and we'll be having those conversations. I know tomorrow and throughout the next few days we'll be well represented at the Springfield Day at the Capitol tomorrow, legislative salute, as well as many other events. And the MSBA Legislative Forum comes up in February. If you haven't followed up with Kathy regarding your registration, if you're interested, I'll be there, and welcome to help us connect with our legislators. So,
I was reading the review of the bills that have been filed. Anything of huge concern?
yeah, don't do that.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, just kidding.
Was there anything there that's a huge red flag?
There's a few. The ones that were in this week's, I don't think, for the majority of those, don't have huge legs, I don't think, or high impact either or. Early in the session, hard to know. The big ones that we are hearing that could have impact are school start date. Lots of legislation being filed regarding that. Pushing that and making that a state-controlled instead of a local decision. There's significant number of bills in conversation, but that really hasn't started to turn into committee hearings and those things yet. And then there is some conversation about some formula bills. We heard Senator Wasson talk about the bill that would control the growth of the formula by putting the caps back on that originated, which we're supportive of, because this formula is good for Springfield, especially now as we invest in the future, because everything that gets invested from here on out, for the most part, is a formula school benefit, because we've kind of come back up to even, so we really want it to hold on. There are some other pieces out there that would have different shifts to the formula that we need to watch that could negatively impact us. So we'll be monitoring that, and it's certainly active in committee hearings and with our other association lobbyists that help support our work. So that combines my report with legislation. So anything else legislatively the board wants to hit on?
There's lots of them.
Yep. Yeah, lots of it
Lots
going
of
on,
it.
yeah.
Very good. Okay, moving on to Board of Education discussion at this time. Do we have anyone that made a building visit, you've been to an activity, an event that you would like to, or anything you want to share with the rest of the board? Jerry?
I'll just make one. At MSBA 2 weeks ago, I made a presentation on the Imagine grants to them. And it was like deer in headlights, just amazement of the creativity and innovation of our teachers and our staff and what they wanted to do. I showed them some of the videos, and biggest question was, well, where's $1,000 come from? Is that private dollars coming in there? I said, no, it comes out of our innovation budget. You have an innovation budget, and we have a department to do that, to look at creative and new ways to educate kids. And it was like, you could see light bulbs come on to a lot of people of, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense to have some dedicated resources to invest in the kids and not depend on private sector to come in and bail you out of things that really need to be done for kids that we need to be stepping up and doing. And it was fun to watch the videos, but still, I showed them the Seat Wars. If you haven't seen that one, watch that one. Seat Wars. Seat Wars. It's a spin-off of Star Wars. Whoever did that one it was incredible. But I'm a Star Wars freak, so I really hit home. But
Our
all of them
favorite
are
part,
really
yeah.
good. They are creative, innovative, and you can tell they're focused on kids, and they want to do what's best for kids for $1,000.
And that's our favorite part. It's coming straight from the mouths of our
Oh,
students.
it's fun. But it got a lot of attention with schools around the state that's really a good way to do that, spur innovation and support that in the district and not wait for somebody else to do it for you.
Are you talking about the Imagine SPS grants or the
Imagine grants.
Ignite?
Imagine grants.
Imagine grants.
Okay, which is different from our Ignite grants, okay. Good, sounds neat. Yeah. Andy?
Do you go back and review those projects? And
Yeah,
see-
so we're just now we've just awarded our first 3, but there's always going to be follow-up with them. What's the impact? How's the culture in your classroom? Did it meet your needs? And we allocated a small budget for this year and just targeting second semester, and then we decide how does that get allocated for next year? Is it having the intended purpose, which is really support innovation at the grassroots level of teachers wanting to do things within our system. We have back to school grants, but that kind of has us flurry at the beginning of the year, and that's from the foundation, but then we just go throughout, and there are more needs and more opportunities, and this is a great way to keep that energy moving throughout the year. So
And if they're good things to have replicated, you'll
figure out how you scale, right? I mean, it becomes a opportunity to kind of seed that and say, all right, now this has worked really well in 5 classrooms. How do we take that and make it into a building or into a grade level or
The big thing of that is, because we preach and have always preached local control, that the money needs to be spent as close to the child as possible. And you can't get any closer than the teacher coming up with these ideas. I mean, that's totally consistent with the money is well spent, well invested at that point.
Anyone else?
I would mention one other event that several of us participated in, and we were going to have the honorees here at the regular meeting, but since we had the conflict, we're bouncing some of the recognitions. But MLK Day was a great event. It was very chilly that morning, but our department led some great efforts to have students recognized. We had artwork, we had essays written, and really impressed with the work of our students in our department to stay highly engaged in that event. And we were well represented.
And will we recognize some of those
Yeah,
individuals?
we will likely invite them back. They've been recognized in a few different ways, so we're trying to see if it still fits in since it's a few months after, but we've had multiple different recognition opportunities, so.
Excellent. Okay. Anyone, anything else? Just a couple things I would like to, from the board perspective, congratulate the staff for our new athletic director, Randy Stang, and Marty Marsh, and their administrative assistants, and everyone that was a part of planning the Tournament of Champions. It was a very exciting, very well-attended event. Was it the most well-attended? I mean, was this one that was?
Yeah, it's, I think, the highest attended in the nation, if you talk about total. I don't know if it was our record for this year,
was
I know we
over
had a record
25,000.
Thursday night, but I don't know if our three-night total was a record. It was over 25,000.
Well, I mean, and that's really huge for our school district. It's just amazing, and I think people that this was their first time to go were in shock about what an awesome event it is, and I mean, it's just a great way to see what we're doing for kids in the athletic arena, which only helps them to be more engaged in their academic endeavors. So it was a great time. Also, congrats to our first couple recipients of the Ignite grant. I had the opportunity, Dr. Dawson, we happened to have a meeting, and he said, hey, you want to go with us? We're going over to award our first Ignite grant, $1,000, to a classroom teacher that had her and her class put together a great little video of what they could do with $1,000 in their classroom. So I got a chance to go over to Jeffries and see that award. And if you get out in the buildings and around the teachers and the kids, take a box of Kleenex. That's all I have to say.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It is so much fun. And Mike asked, and the kids were so excited, and the teacher was so excited, and I love doing that with a part of SPS Foundation grants, but this is something that the kids put together. They did a little cute video, and they did a rap, and they sang, and did several different things. But Mike asked the class, what do you like best about your teacher? Which is a scary thing for a teacher to ask the kids. But the things that came forward were, she's caring, she's fun, she loves us. And one little student who was just a hoot, you could tell. You get that, you know those kids that have that look in their eye. And she looked back and she goes, she's sarcastic, like me. And that's exactly what the little girl said, like me. And she identified with that sense of humor. These were fifth graders, I think, fourth graders. Just an awesome event. So if you get a chance to go to a school whenever these grants are awarded, and they were so excited, they already had it all spent. They already knew exactly what they were going to do. So anyway, that was a great thing. And then the last thing I want to mention is a little bit back to what I said about our Tuesday event, trying to get to the board meeting. But I want to send a very special thank you to all our bus drivers, our transportation department, and our bus drivers that got all our kids home safe and sound, because this last week I've had many people mention that as they were out traveling that evening, they saw school buses, and for many of them, they said it was the first time they really thought what it would be like to be a bus driver and have 30 children, and to have 30 children that you were responsible for getting them home safely on such a surprisingly bad night. It hit so quick, and so that's just something that's been brought to my attention several times. So I wanted to, and I don't know if the rest of you, have heard that, but just how thankful we are to the great people that drive our buses and get our kids home, get to and from school. I don't think we thank them enough. But.
Incredible team effort that night, and all hands on deck.
Absolutely. So, okay. Anything else? Upcoming meetings. We have our legislative salute in Jefferson City tomorrow. The board will be well represented. I think 4 of us will be headed up. So I hope that'll be a good thing. We also, the Chamber of Commerce annual meeting, January
It's on Friday.
29. And then our next meeting is next week, our February study session, February 2nd. So we're going to be busy.
Comes around quick.
Yeah. Okay. Any other meetings I missed, Jerry? Think of any?
City Forum's the only one, and that's 15th.
Announcements about that. So.
16th.
Okay. Moving on. I think this is a good time if you have some plus and some things you liked about this meeting. In fact, please note it is 6:12.
Wow.
I know we were invading on your other Thursday, or other, whatever it is, Tuesday this month, so we tried to move the pace, so, since you're not typically scheduled for this one, so.
Moving on to executive session, the board recommended action that the board meets in exec session to discuss real estate personnel issues as provided in section 610-021, 2, 3, and 13 RSMO. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Jerry Lee, second by Jean Twitty. Please vote. Boy, it's a good time. Motion carries. This time we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for coming.